The bell above the gun shop door rang with a tired metallic chime as an old farmer stepped inside, carrying nothing except a faded canvas hat and decades of silent hardship on his shoulders. Dust clung to his worn boots, and the elbows of his flannel jacket had been patched so many times they looked older than the building itself. Every conversation in the shop paused for a heartbeat before turning into quiet laughter. 3 young customers standing near the display counter exchanged amused glances. One smirked. "Looks like Grandpa wandered into the wrong store." Another laughed louder. "Maybe he's looking for a museum." The cashier forced a polite smile but clearly expected the old man to leave without buying anything. "Can I help you, sir?" The farmer nodded gently. "I'd like to see the hunting rifles." The youngest customer rolled his eyes. "You planning to scare crows with it?" The more laughter echoed through the room. The old man ignored every word. His weathered hands rested calmly on the wooden counter, showing neither anger nor embarrassment. His eyes quietly examined every rifle on the wall with the careful attention of someone who respected tools instead of collecting trophies. The cashier placed an expensive rifle on the counter. "This one costs more than most pickup trucks." Before the farmer could even touch it, another customer interrupted. "Better put that away before he asks if you accept chickens as payment." Even the cashier struggled not to laugh. The farmer simply smiled. "I didn't ask the price," he said softly. "I asked to see the rifle." Something about the calmness in his voice unsettled the cashier, but the mocking continued. "So what do you farm?" one man asked sarcastically. "Mostly corn," the farmer replied. "And dreams?" "No," the farmer answered. "Mostly silence." His unexpected response left the room strangely quiet for a second before another wave of laughter returned. Outside, dark storm clouds gathered over the small town, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Thunder rumbled in the distance, but inside the shop nobody noticed except the old farmer. He glanced toward the windows as though measuring something invisible. Then the front door opened again. A tall man with silver hair entered wearing an old military jacket covered by a simple raincoat. His posture was perfectly straight despite his age. The room fell silent almost instantly. Everyone recognized him. He was the shop's owner, a decorated combat veteran who rarely appeared anymore after handing daily operations to younger employees. People respected him because stories about his service had become local legend. The veteran removed his cap and looked across the room. His eyes stopped on the old farmer. For one long second neither man spoke. The veteran's face drained of color. His breathing became uneven. The raincoat slipped from his hand onto the wooden floor. Every customer stared in confusion. Then, to everyone's disbelief, the veteran walked directly toward the farmer, stopped only inches away, and slowly raised his trembling hand. "You," he whispered. The farmer looked into his eyes without surprise. "It has been a long time." The veteran's voice cracked. "No," he said, almost unable to breathe. "It can't be." The young customers exchanged nervous glances. None of them had ever seen the old soldier lose his composure. The veteran suddenly stood at full attention. His right hand rose sharply into a perfect military salute. Tears filled his eyes. "Sergeant Elias Turner," he said loudly enough for the entire shop to hear. "I never believed I'd see you again." Every laugh vanished. The farmer removed his faded hat. "I was hoping you wouldn't recognize me," he admitted quietly. The veteran shook his head. "Recognize you?" he whispered. "You carried me through enemy fire when everyone else believed I was already dead." The room became so silent that the ticking wall clock sounded like distant footsteps. No one dared speak. No one dared move. And every person who had laughed only moments earlier suddenly realized they knew absolutely nothing about the quiet old farmer standing before them. The silence lingered like a storm waiting to break. The 3 young men who had mocked the old farmer could no longer meet his eyes. The cashier stood frozen behind the counter, embarrassed by every careless word he had allowed to pass. Sergeant Elias Turner simply adjusted his worn hat and looked as though none of it mattered. The veteran owner finally lowered his salute, but the emotion on his face refused to disappear. "You saved 6 men that day," he said. They awarded medals to officers, but the bravest man on that battlefield disappeared before anyone could thank him. Elias offered a faint smile. "I went home. My family needed a farmer more than the army needed another old soldier." Before anyone could answer, a loud crash shattered the uneasy calm. The front window exploded inward. Glass sprayed across the floor as 2 masked men burst into the shop carrying rifles. Panic erupted instantly. Customers dove behind shelves while the cashier stumbled backward, knocking ammunition boxes onto the floor. "Nobody move," one robber shouted. "Hands where we can see them." The second man locked the front door and pointed his weapon toward a frightened mother shielding her young son near the entrance. The veteran owner slowly raised his hands. "Take whatever you want," he said steadily. "Just don't hurt anyone." The taller robber laughed. "That's exactly what I planned, until you started giving orders." He struck the veteran across the face with the rifle stock. Blood trickled from the old soldier's forehead as he collapsed against a display case. The child screamed. Fear spread through the room like wildfire. Only Elias remained perfectly still. His breathing stayed slow. His eyes never left the robbers. Every movement they made seemed to register in his mind long before it happened. One robber noticed him. He barked, "Old man, get on your knees." Elias calmly set his hat on the floor. "My knees don't bend very well anymore." The robber marched toward him, furious. "You think this is funny?" "No," Elias answered quietly. "I think you're making several mistakes." The criminal raised his rifle. Before anyone realized what had happened, Elias stepped sideways with surprising speed. He redirected the barrel away from the customers, grabbed the man's wrist, and used his own momentum to throw him hard onto the wooden floor. The rifle slid across the room. The second robber spun around in shock. "You old." His words ended as the veteran owner, despite his injuries, kicked another rifle beneath a heavy display rack. The shop erupted into chaos. One criminal lunged with a hunting knife, forcing Elias backward between narrow aisles. The old farmer moved with calm precision, never wasting energy. Every step looked simple, yet every movement placed him exactly where he needed to be. The robber swung wildly. Elias ducked. The blade struck a wooden shelf instead. With one controlled motion, Elias twisted the attacker's arm until the knife clattered onto the floor. Sirens echoed faintly outside. The remaining robber reached for a hidden handgun. Elias saw it first. His expression changed for the first time since entering the shop, not with fear, with determination. He knew the next few seconds would decide whether everyone inside survived. The robber yanked the handgun free and swung it toward the frightened mother and her son, hoping to force everyone back. Time seemed to slow. Every terrified face turned toward Elias, not because anyone expected a miracle, but because he was the only person who still looked completely calm. Without hesitation, Elias stepped into the line of fire. "Look at me," he said firmly. The robber fired. The deafening shot echoed through the shop, but Elias had already shifted his weight. The bullet shattered a display case instead of striking its target. Before the robber could fire again, Elias closed the distance with astonishing speed. Years of farm work had kept his body stronger than anyone imagined. He trapped the man's wrist, forced the handgun toward the floor, and a second shot buried itself harmlessly in the concrete. The veteran owner reached the robber from behind, helping Elias pin him until police officers stormed through the entrance. "Drop the weapon." Within seconds, both criminals were handcuffed and taken into custody. The tension that had filled the room vanished almost instantly, replaced by stunned silence. Paramedics treated the veteran's injured forehead while officers collected statements. One detective approached Elias with disbelief. "Sir, where did you learn to move like that?" Elias glanced toward the veteran owner before answering. "A long time ago. People depended on me to keep them alive." The veteran smiled through watery eyes. "Isn't just a soldier," he said proudly. "He's the man who taught our reconnaissance unit how to survive when everything went wrong. During one mission, he carried wounded men across impossible terrain for nearly 2 days. Without him, none of us would have made it home." The detective looked at Elias with newfound respect. "Why did you never tell anyone?" Elias adjusted his weathered jacket. "Because real service isn't about being remembered. It's about making sure others get the chance to live their own lives." The young men who had mocked him earlier slowly walked forward. Their confidence had disappeared completely. The first one swallowed hard. "Sir, we're sorry. We judged you before we knew anything about you." The second lowered his head. "We thought those old clothes told your story." Elias smiled kindly. "They do tell my story," he replied. "They remind me that honest work is nothing to be ashamed of." The cashier stepped from behind the counter carrying the hunting rifle Elias had first requested to see. "I don't know if you'll still want it," he said quietly, "but it would be an honor to help you today." Elias examined the rifle carefully before nodding with approval. "This one will do nicely," he said. "Coyotes have been troubling the calves." Lauder returned to the shop, but this time it was warm, respectful, and shared by everyone. As Elias walked toward the door, the veteran owner called after him. "You'll always have a place here, Sergeant." The old farmer tipped his faded hat. "So will every person willing to look beyond appearances." He stepped into the fresh rain, leaving behind more than a rescued gun shop. He left a lesson no one inside would ever forget. True strength rarely announces itself. Real heroes seldom seek recognition, and the quietest person in the room may be carrying the greatest story of all. If this story reminded you never to judge someone by appearances and to honor those whose sacrifices often go unseen, subscribe for more unforgettable stories that prove courage, humility, and kindness can change lives forever.